friends. Today we're going to be working on some fraction review. What you'll need for this lesson is paper, lined paper, pencils, and some colored pencils or markers of your choice. You may also use crayons. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And here we go. All right, so we're going to start with an I can review fraction vocabulary. I've already written this out for you, so if you need to, go ahead and pause the screen and write your I can statement on your anchor chart. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to just be reviewing some vocabulary before we start taking some notes. So the first one we're going to look at is the word fraction. A fraction is a symbol that names a part of a whole, a part of a set, or a location on a number line. So for the word fraction, we're just going to take a quick note about fraction. Let's see if I can move this down here. And we're just going to write the word fraction. And feel free to use your colors to make this fancy. Pause the video at any time to get caught up. Fraction. And then I'm going to draw a little arrow, try to make it fun. Fraction, a symbol that names part of a whole. So I'm just going to write an abbreviated version, names part of a whole. Comma. So when we're talking about a whole, it also can name part of a set or a location on a number line. Or location on a number line. I use what you guys call the hashtag symbol, which is also a pound sign, which also is a number symbol. So I'm using this symbol, which we have three names for, hashtag, pound, or number abbreviation for the number line. Okay, so a fraction we know is part of a whole. And here's three little examples of a fraction. Fractions are made up of two parts. We have the top, which we call the numerator, and we have the bottom, which we call a denominator. So the numerator is on the top and it names the parts, and the denominator is on the bottom and it names the whole. So I like to sing a little song, numerator, 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 numerator. The numerator's on the top, the numerator is the parts. Denominator, denominator, denominator's on the bottom, denominator is the whole. And so it's much more fun to sing that when we sing it as a recall and response in class. But today for this video, I just wanted to throw that out there to refresh your brains that the numerator's on the top and it names the parts, and the denominator's on the whole and it names the bottom. And if you want to be really silly with it, you can sing the song again and use a high sound, numerator, to help you remember that it's on the top, and denominator, and just go really low with it to remember that denominators are on the bottom and they name the whole. So play around with that and have some fun, because we want you to remember that math is fun. All right, so numerator is the top and the parts, and the denominator is the bottom and it's the whole. So we're going to take a quick note about those two things. So we'll start with numerator. So I'm going to write my N just like that, and then I'm going to put a line and then put this D. And I like to do this because when we're making anchor charts, we want our brains to remember and come up with things that, so we're not worried about spelling, we're just thinking about what does that N stand for? It's the numerator. So I'm going to use a different color now, and I'm going to write out numerator, N-U-M-E-R-A-T-O-R. And the numerator, we know it's on the top and it means the parts. So the numerator is on the top and it names the parts. Okay? And very similarly, we're going to do the same kind of thing for our denominator. Pull this back over here. So our denominator is the number below the fraction bar, below the line, it's on the bottom, and it names the total number of equal parts, or I like to call it names all the parts in the whole. So I'm going to write denominator, D-E-N-O-M-I-N-A-T-O-R, denominator. Now the denominator is on the bottom, B-O-T-T-O-M, it's on the bottom of the fraction bar, and it names all the parts in the whole. So I'm going to write that out. Usually I would just write whole. So I'm going to write that first, and then I'm going to do one of my fancy little swirls, and I'm going to write all the parts in the whole. Remember, friends, at any time, pause the video and catch up so that you can make your anchor chart with me. This is going to be a great thing for you to have when you're solving your problems as we go throughout the next 3 weeks. Working on fraction vocabulary is very important to remember what things are called, because that's how we're going to answer the questions. So if a question says, what is the numerator of this fraction? If you can't remember that the numerator's on the top, then you have your chart that you can use to help you. Okay, that's why this is important. And also you're going to show this to your teacher, myself, or Miss LaFleur on your flip grid, and you're going to have it for when you are answering questions. All right, so we have denominators on the bottom, and it's the whole. So we're going to be talking about a very special kind of fraction today, and our special kind of fraction is a unit fraction. So unit means 1. So I want you to say that 3 times with me. Unit means 1. Unit means 1. Unit means 1. So the word unit means 1. Okay, so when we're talking about a unit fraction, it's naming one part of the whole. So we're going to write one part of the whole. So we're going to write unit fraction. That's our vocabulary word. And a unit fraction names one part of the whole. So the fun thing about this is that usually when you're doing these charts with me on the carpet, you are using your journals and you're writing in your pencil, and we don't have time to make them fancy all together. And Miss Gerald gets to use her markers and you guys use pencils. And later on, you guys are allowed to make your charts or in your notebooks look nice, or you can redo them in a station. But for this activity, you get to do it right along with me. So that makes this pretty fun, I think. All right, and I can't wait to see all of your cool designs. So the unit fraction was my vocabulary. And so I used my darker marker all the way across because this is something that's really standing out. So now when I really dig into my unit fractions, these are the ones that we're going to highlight. And so before we continue on with that, we're going to look at some unit fractions. All right, so remember to pause the screen right now if you need to get caught up. You can have a clear view. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to pause. Now we're going to go into halves. Now, this is when we have 2 parts and we're talking about 1 out of 2. So it's 1 part out of the whole, which is a unit fraction, 1/2. All right, if we're looking at thirds, we'll have 3 equal parts, and we'll be naming 1/3, which is 1 part out of the whole, 1 out of 3. And it goes on and on. So here's another one, which is fourths, 1 part out of 4, or 1/4. So if you're just looking at these 3 fraction pictures, so I'm just going to line these up just like this. And now I want you to grab your markers, or your colored pencils, and you're going to follow along with me. We're going to start with our 1/2. Well, I guess I should have had them the other way, shouldn't I? So we're going to flip them over this way so that you guys can see them. We're going to start with 1/2. So I'm going to draw, first of all, I should tell you that these are naming fractions of a whole, because you see there's one whole here. We're naming one part out of the whole, 1 out of 3 in the whole, and 1 out of 4 in the whole. So I could name 1/2. I'm going to show you a model on my paper. Just draw that circle and shade in 1. And this is 1 part of the whole. Okay. And then if I wanted to show 1/2 of a set, I'm going to pretend that I have 2 marbles here, and 1/2 of the marbles are purple and the other half is white. So I would say 1/2 of a set. That's 1 out of 2 for the set. And then the last thing, if you looked back up, it was then a location on a number line. And so this one might take a little bit longer for you to draw, so make sure that you pause if you need to and be very neat. We want our spaces to be as equal as possible. So I'm going to just start right here, and I'm going to draw a little line. And then I'm going to draw a 0 and a 1. And then I'm going to look halfway between 0 and 1, and I can see that right here would be half. And I'm going to make a point on that number line, and then I'm going to make my little swirlies to make it fancy. And I know that this is naming 1/2 on the number line. Okay, so we have now drawn an example of a unit fraction in a whole, in a set, and on a number line. And so I'm going to use a different colored marker now. Let's go with red. And I'm going to underline whole, underline set, and then I'm going to label this number line. And feel free, if you want, to write out the word number line. I just like to make it a little bit less about writing and more about thinking about the mathematics. So anytime that I can abbreviate things for you, I will do my best to do that. Okay, so these were our examples of our unit fractions, 3 different kinds. But now I just want you just to take a look at these 3 pictures. What do you notice about 1/2, 1/3, and 1/4? They all name one part of their whole, yes. And if you're looking at them, we know that half of a cake is bigger than 1/3 of a cake or 1/4 of a cake. But it's really hard to determine this comparing these because they're all not the same shape or the same size. So we can't compare fractions that aren't the same shape or the same size because we're not quite sure, right? It just doesn't, it can't be done, okay? So what we want to do is if we wanted to compare our unit fractions, for example, if I wanted to compare 1/2 to 1/3, I wouldn't need to draw a half in a circle and a third in a box because I wouldn't be able to compare them correctly. So if I'm going to draw a fraction model, I like to just stick with boxes. Makes things a little bit easier. So here's a box. And then here is another box under my third. And I'm doing my best to make my boxes roughly the same size. Now remember, we are not computers. We are not using rulers. We are just taking quick notes. So give yourself some grace. Just like mine is not perfect. You can see there's a little bit of discrepancy on my squares. We're just going to keep going. So I'm going to do my best to shade in half of this rectangle, red. And then I'm going to take this rectangle and I'm going to do my best to break it into thirds. And I suggest that you use your pencil to be able to do this part and then use your crayon or your markers or whatever you're using to color them in after you've marked it off with your pencil first because we can make mistakes. And I'm actually going to switch to pencils. You'll see me do that in a second. All right, so if I'm looking at this, if this was a medium-sized cake and this was a medium-sized cake, and you had half and I had 1/3 of two different parts, right? Two different cakes, we could compare and we can see that 1/2 covers more space than 1/3. So 1/2 is greater than, and if you've forgotten, when we are comparing fractions or when we're comparing numbers, to compare means to figure out which one is greater or less than, which means is larger or smaller. And so we'll use these symbols. We'll have a less than symbol. We read it with the point this way. We say less than. And if it is greater than, then the open mouth is what you see first when we read from left to right, greater than. And then there are times where fractions or numbers are equal to each other. And so then we just use the equal sign. So if we're comparing our unit fractions, we'll use our greater than, less than, or equal to signs, and that will help us. All right, so now we're going to look at 1/4. So 1/4, if I can draw that box really similar, I'm going to put I can see if I did this with my finger, the box is about the size of my finger now. So I'm going to put my box right here, and I'm going to do my best to make it right around the same size. And you can see that it's not quite perfect, but because I shaded this like this, I can just shade in one part. And then it's pretty easy to see that 1/4 is only half of a half. And 1/4 is less than 1/3 because 1/3 is skinnier, but it's longer and it takes up more space. Okay, so I know that 1/3 is greater than 1/4, which leads me to believe that when we're comparing unit fractions, the smaller the denominator, the bigger the pieces. So I'm going to write that. When comparing unit fractions, this also goes for the same as if the numerators are the same. Unit fractions or fractions that have the same, there's an M, the same, I'm just going to use a capital letter N for numerator. We know that's what this means, right? Here it is. Have the same numerator when comparing unit fractions or fractions that have the same numerator, comma, the smaller, and I'm writing smaller in all capital letters. I'm using that text feature of making it in all capital letters to make it stand out to me when I'm going back to review. The smaller the denominator, you can write it out or you can use the abbreviation like I'm doing here. The bigger the pieces. So when we think about this, it's opposite of what we would normally think. So another way to explain it is that if you are sitting at a table, so here's your table, you're sitting here and you get to share with 3 friends, okay, there's going to be thirds here, you're going to get 1/3 of a pizza. Or if you're sitting here at this table and you get to share with, let's say, 5 friends, so there are 5 people going to eat pizza at this table, so you would get 1/5. Or there's a table with just 2 chairs, and you would get to share a pizza with just one other person. You would get half of a pizza. So if you're thinking about you have a set, right, and you get to share with the more people you share with, the smaller the piece you each get. So 1/3 is greater than 1/5. But 1/2 is greater than 1/5 too. All right, so the larger the denominator, So like the more pieces that you're having to cut it into are sharing. So the share just gets smaller and smaller. So let me say that again. If you're sitting down to eat pizza at each one of these tables, okay, each one of these tables is going to have the same size pizza delivered to it at the party. And you get to pick, and let's say you're starving, you're so hungry. If you go and sit with 2 other friends here, you each get a third. And if you sit with 4 other friends here, then there's 5 people to share the pizza, and you get a 1 part out of 5. And if you share with just 1 other person, you get half of the pizza. Well, everybody knows that half of something is pretty big, right? So you're only sharing with 2, so you get a bigger piece. So I'm just going to label this the pizza party to help you remember that this is when we talked about the pizza party. Where do you want to sit to get the biggest amount of pizza? You want to sit in the half. This will be the biggest. Yes? And if you want the smallest, then you would want to sit here. This is going to be the smallest. And this would be the biggest. Okay. So we're going to continue to talk about this, but what we're going to do now is we are going to turn your paper and we're going to compare fractions of a set. So I'm just going to write out some problems. So, we need to write a target because now we've really shifted from vocabulary to now we're applying our vocabulary knowledge by comparing our unit fractions. So our I can is going to be I can compare unit fractions. All right, so number 1 on your paper, we're going to be comparing 1/4 to 1/10. Okay, now remember, ask yourself, you're hungry and you get 1 piece of pizza. Do you want to share that piece of pizza with 4 friends, like in all 4 pieces, or 10 pieces? If you only get 1 slice, are you going to sit down at the pizza party with 3 other people and have a 4th? Or are you going to sit down and at the chair that has the table that has 10 people and you would be 1 out of 10? Which one would you get more pizza? And everybody says 1/4 is bigger. 1/4. So let's explain this. If we wanted to think about this as a set, let's say that we get 1 out of 4 here. So there's 1 out of 4. And over here, we would get 1 out of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we only get 1 little piece. You only get that one. Your piece is going to be much smaller. Look at these big pieces right here. These pieces, which I know we don't have circular pieces of pizza usually, but just go with me, okay? Then we know that 1/4 is definitely bigger than 1/10. All right, let's look at number 2. So we're going to do 1/8 compared to 1/3, which is going to be larger. 1/8 or 1/3. I encourage you to pause the video, solve for this, and then possibly draw a model. Okay, guys, I hope you paused and you took a second to think about this problem on your own. So now let's try it. So we have 1 out of 8 or 1 out of 3. Well, I know that we just talked about the smaller the denominator, the bigger the pieces. So 1/3 is much bigger than 1/8. So this time I'm going to draw a circular model. And I'm going to draw 2 circles roughly the same size. And then I'm going to grab my pencil. Because I told you guys that sometimes when we're drawing, if we use our pencil first, then we can erase when we make a mistake. So I'm going to cut my fraction in half. And then I'm going to cut it into 4ths. And then I'm going to cut it here and here. And then I'm going to count my pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so yes, I have 8 pieces. So I'm going to color 1 out of 8. You can see I just colored it just quickly there. And then over here, I have thirds. So I'm going to go down and over again. And I can tell that this piece is a little bit too small, so I can adjust. Come this way a bit more. And then I can adjust on this side a little bit. And I can go this way a bit more. And then I'm going to kind of use what I have. Still doesn't look exactly right, but like we said, we're not computers. We're just doing the best that we can. So I'm going to go ahead and shade in 1/3 of this pizza. Okay. And just looking at my colored portion, I can see that there's more orange in this circle than there is in this circle. So 1/3 is definitely bigger than 1/8. Okay. All right. Let's do a little bit of matching. So if I gave you all of the pieces in the whole, right, like this, 2 out of 2, you have all the pieces in the whole. And I wanted you to compare that to 2 out of 1. You have 2 pieces and 1 is in the whole. Here are the picture cards that go with this. So this means you just have 1 whole, and this one means that you have 2 wholes. 2 parts out of 1 in each whole. So you are going to be learning more about this in our next session, but I just wanted to throw that out there to you just so that you can be working on that on Khan Academy, or if you're going to freckle into the adapted applications, you can click on fraction and you can work your way through those skills, watch the videos, solve the problems. But 2 out of 2 just means that you have both pieces in the whole, and 2 out of 1 means that you have 2 parts, but there's 1 in each part. So 2 out of 1. Let's look at another example of this. It would be 8 out of 1. You have 8 parts, but there's 1 part in each whole. So you have 8 out of 1, which is equal to 8 wholes. And here's the picture that matches that. Okay, that is much different than this fraction, which is 8 out of 8, which is equal to 1 whole. It just means you have all the slices. Okay, so we're going to continue to work on that next time. So that's a quick preview of next time. I encourage you to make sure that you have done all of the things on your anchor chart, and you can continue to practice the skill on Freckle and Khan Academy. There will be a couple of problems that you will need to solve. At the end of this video, there's a Google form for you to answer. The first thing I need you to do is to grab some kind of marker or highlighter, and I want you to go back to your original anchor chart. And I'm going to find a marker or highlighter. I think I'm going to look for my pink one. I had this yesterday and it was super fun to use. And I want you to go to the first I can statement that we wrote, and it says, I can review fraction vocabulary. I want you to circle the word vocabulary. That is going to be one of your questions in your Google form. What did Ms. Gerald circle in pink in the first I can statement? Okay, this is just like our secret, top secret questions to help me know that you guys are truly taking time to read, to watch the videos and make the charts and practice your learning. All right, the second thing is going to be a unit fraction names one part of the whole. So your question is going to come from this sentence. And then you are going to have some questions that are going to look like these. They won't be these exact problems, but the third part will be a question where you have to compare unit fractions. So using the examples that we did on this part will help you solve the problems. Okay, friends, I really thank you for your attention today and all of your hard work. And I wish you the best, happiest day ever. Make sure that you finish your anchor chart, show it to us on Flipgrid. And I just want to tell you that I miss you guys. I miss being in the classroom with you every day, but I'm glad that I get to come to you live through our TV screens, through our Chromebooks or iPads or however you're watching this video, and get to teach you and share with you the love of math. So have a great day, friends. I love you. Learn a lot. Bye.